Are we on?
It should be live from Littleton.
Okay, 6:30, I'm calling the Littleton Affordable Housing Trust meeting for Tuesday, November 16th to order. I guess the first order of business is an update from the Elder Human Services LRAP program.
Yeah, Maureen Tuchel, on behalf of Elder and Human Services, Nicole is on vacation, and Liz was not able to make it tonight, but they just gave a brief overview of the active ERAP applications, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program applications. So Household ERAP 2 is seeking extensions, and Elder and Human Services is reviewing that request. ERAP 5, the extension was granted through January, and currently that household is on a RAP program, and they're actively looking for more affordable housing. ERAP 7, they're currently on their final extension, and then they will likely be transitioned to the LRAP, the longer-term rental assistance program. And then ERAP 9 will receive final assistance payment in November, and then will transition off the program due to employment. So there's great news with that one, that household.
That's great.
ERAP 12 is waiting on RAFT and SSDI approval, so they've reached out for federal assistance, and they're waiting for that, for notice on that to come through. So you had asked for updates on the
Right.
emergency rental assistance program. So that's what Elder and Human Services provided. There are no new applications for any of the programs, LRAP, ERAP, or the emergency mortgage assistance program.
Okay.
Did the board make a decision about what we were going to do about ERAP? About as far as continuing the program now that COVID restrictions are lifted and lifting? Well, yeah, exactly. Thank you.
I don't think we discussed it specifically. I think we talked about extending ERAP last time.
Yeah.
We did talk about.
But it wasn't about, like, we just talked about extending it for the people who are currently on it. We didn't talk about extending it in relation to the pandemic.
Right, because, I mean, I was just reading through everything, and, I mean, we created ERAP to help people that were impacted by COVID, specifically. So I just look at it now as, and that was at a time when everybody was laid off, businesses closed down, kids, people couldn't go to work, and, the kids weren't in school. So I look at it now, and I just feel, based upon the number of help wanted signs out everywhere, are there people that still are unable to work because of COVID specifically? Like, I'm having trouble getting my head around that. The circumstances that would require an extension.
Yeah, when applicants or households need an extension, when they're past the, what did you say, 9 months?
No.
When they're past that, then they have to requalify with Elder and Human Services. So they check their income levels to make sure they don't exceed the requirements. And I guess I can imagine a handful of reasons that some would not be able to go back to employment. Perhaps they're retired. Perhaps they have health issues where they can't come in contact with others.
So, but then, I guess my question is, should then they transition over to LRAP as opposed to ERAP?
And that's what seems to be happening in at least one case, if not two.
Okay.
I don't think we formed a policy on that
Yeah.
yet. So I think that's something that we need to.
I think that we talked about a termination point at a specific, we talked about a specific termination point, but whether it's for ERAP or LRAP, I'm not entirely sure, but I think it might have been for LRAP. So I don't think there's a time limit for the ERAP though. However, if conditions are improving, then people shouldn't remain on it. They can just transition to LRAP.
Right. So maybe when we can have this discussion more in depth at our next meeting when we have representatives from EHS here to participate in that topic. I just would be interested more about the application process and what we as a board need to discuss and decide to do going forward with that.
And I'm wondering if maybe they can also share whether or not the federal programs, access to those programs is easier now, because for a while there was just such a long wait. It was, you know, my understanding there was 6 to 12 months before you would hear back.
Okay. And maybe if they could just outline for us, Maren, the difference between ERAP and LRAP, just make it simple as far as what assistance
Well-
provided. I mean, I know that we know that, but just maybe get it in writing for us, just for that purposes of that conversation.
Okay, yeah, if you just outline what the questions are, then.
Okay.
Put up a list to.
All right, sounds good. Thank you.
Okay. That takes care of that update. The next item is board member input. Does anybody on the board have a input to share?
Matthew, did you have an update on Habitat?
Yeah, I have a couple things. So
Okay.
we talked about partnering with Northern Mass Habitat. I don't remember exactly what's
Yeah,
their?
that's close
It's
enough.
something like that. Anyway, I spoke to Kathy there a couple of weeks ago. She was the one who came and did the presentation. She was, I proposed the idea of us using some of our funds to pay for a project manager to build a house in Littleton, because I recall that she said that that was their bottleneck for getting projects done, and she thought that was a great idea. She said she just needed to run it by her board, and I believe they're meeting tomorrow night. So I will find out from her, and at the next meeting, perhaps we can discuss the practical, I mean, I can find out how much it's going to cost and the timeline and what sort of site we need and so forth.
Okay.
And then I spoke to Ed Mullen about the Durkee farmhouse, and he said that he thought the barn was a better structure to turn into multi-unit than the house was, but that either one would be fine to do.
Okay.
He also said that at this point, the developer is planning on doing a 2-unit septic system. So if we wanted to have more units than that, we should probably discuss with him, and that there's also some more work he needs to do on water mains, and that there might be a way of us working out, getting him to do a 4-unit septic in exchange for, some consideration on how much he was going to have to pay to extend the water main on Grimes Lane. There was also the matter, I guess there was $70,000, which was earmarked for the Affordable Housing Trust from that development. And I don't know where that is.
That was done at a planning board meeting, that
Yeah.
discussion.
We got $10,000 for each lot that was that we approved. We changed basically all we did was change the lot line. So I believe the determination was that as he sold each one, he was going to give us the $10,000.
Oh, okay.
So we do have $70,000 earmarked for
Okay,
that.
great. But the money isn't around
We
yet.
haven't got it yet.
Okay, that's cool. All right.
Okay.
So it's possible that if we want to say to him, put in a 4-unit septic, and we can discuss the $10,000 payments, if the board,
Or-
pleases.
Or is the water department involved in extending the main to the new houses?
Not partially. And again, Ed I didn't get all the details, so
Right,
there's a
okay.
lot more to discuss there.
All
Right.
So that's kind of an open question at this point.
Yeah,
does-
but I think before he works on the septic, we should probably
Right.
make a determination of what we would like to do with that house. And did you, I think you were gonna look into an engineer?
I did, I emailed him, and he asked me, I told him what we were looking for, and he was supposed to email me back with the name of the engineer that he was gonna recommend we speak to assess the house and the barn, and I didn't hear back from him.
Okay.
That was last week, so.
Where, Mark, do you know where that development is at as far as, are the houses being constructed? Are
Yeah, there are two of them, two are up, maybe three.
Yeah, no occupancy
Yeah,
permits yet.
nothing. They're just,
But they're close to, the first ones are close?
the first ones are being started, yeah.
Okay, great.
And as far as the water main issue is not with what we're doing. The water main is a determination between the water department and him about extending the water main down to Grimes Lane.
Right.
Which was part of the original subdivision that has to go in front of these houses, so they're still arguing with that, but we definitely have the 70,000 we can use to work on the septic
Okay.
system.
And we could, if we need to bring Nick into this conversation, we can do that, right? Because Ed's impression was that the water department also had to do some of the work. Maybe he's mistaken, but.
And I think that's a discussion between the water department and the developer.
Okay.
I think
Yeah,
we'd
there's
like
a lot
to
of
stay out of there.
All right, that's probably smart.
If we could.
A
Okay.
lot of, discussions to be had with that. Maybe we
Okay.
can try to set up a time to meet with Dave. I'll follow up with him again.
Okay.
All right.
That's all I have.
I'm encouraged that if Ed thinks the barn is a viable structure, I think some of those old houses are very difficult to split in a reasonable way.
I mean, he said both of them you could do it with both of them, but he said the barn would be easier to divide,
Sure.
I think.
Yeah, the house is small. I mean,
Yeah.
it's low
The house is
ceilings.
small
and
and
the
it's
barn
got-
is, from a painting standpoint, it's an open palette.
Right.
It's just a big square
It's just-
box
It's a box with some,
that seems relatively stable.
yeah. Okay, good.
Okay.
Okay. Cindy, do you have anything else?
I don't.
No, do you?
No.
No? Angus, do you have?
No, no updates.
Okay, the only thing I can add is that from a CPC perspective, the Stuart Saginaw announced that there's a lot of money coming from the state, and I think Littleton is getting, I don't know, $140,000 roughly from the state as a bonus for our participation. I don't know, Anna, do you know what that exact number is?
From CPC, you mean?
Yeah.
I do not, I'm sorry.
Okay. It's in that ballpark. So there's money from the state coming in, and sort of 20% of that will go towards housing. Okay, the next thing is the minutes of the prior meeting. Has everybody read the minutes?
Yeah.
Okay, is there a motion to discuss, approve?
So moved.
So moved?
Second.
Second, all in favor of approving the minutes?
Aye.
Aye, done. Okay. The Lupoli companies are welcome to speak to us. We are looking forward to this discussion.
Thanks for inviting us.
Well, thank you for coming.
So maybe I'll lead off. Good evening, I'm Rick Freiberg from TEC, civil engineer for the project, here tonight with Sal Lavoli, the president and CEO of Lupoli Companies, and the new landowner of 550 King Street. Obviously, as you all know, the zoning warrant articles were successful at town meeting, which allows for residential on the King Street site, which we thought was really an important step for the town to help revitalize the downtown and the common, and sort of bring vibrancy back to that location. I think tonight, well, I should say, through the whole process, the various public forums we've had with the town, we've understood that if the project was to include housing, then finding the right balance of affordable housing was really important to the town. And we've also understood that whole time that this trust was a valuable resource to helping us understand what the needs of Littleton are. So we come into it knowing that you guys are looking for affordable housing components, perhaps maybe even affordable housing components that sort of target different demographics. And so I guess we're here to sort of collect notes, collect thoughts, listen to ideas, just so you guys know where we are sort of in the process. Immediately after the town meeting vote, we began working hard on the master plan. We've been meeting last week and this week with some sort of nationally recognized master planning firms to help us with it. because the site is such a unique opportunity that we feel like we're about 80% of the way there with us doing it, but bringing on somebody who really knows their stuff has a chance to elevate the project to be something really special. And we think that's what this location can be for the town of Littleton, is something really special. So that's where we are, sort of in the background, trying to put the puzzle pieces together. So this seemed like sort of the perfect time to come meet with you guys, understand what the needs of the community are, what the trust is looking for, and see how we can incorporate maybe various aspects of that into the project.
Great.
And I just want to say, that all the projects that the Lapoli companies have done are in gateway cities. And gateway cities sometimes have their fair share of affordable or subsidized housing. So I never entered that arena.
Okay.
And I will tell you, you have a great champion in Cindy, who probably the first questions before we even started talking about a master project was not only what the percentage was, but how much more over are we going to go?
Right.
So she made me put a big smile on my face, and she really opened my eyes and made me understand, because not ever doing affordable housing,
Right.
the different buckets that Rick alluded to. And we're super interested in trying to work with the town of how do we just not concentrate on one bucket? Because I'm very interested in trying to fill or try to create opportunities for all the buckets, right?
Right.
I'm a big believer in workforce housing. I'm a big believer, after talking with Cindy and understanding some of the challenges that Littleton has, is how do we create a real affordable housing, right?
Yeah.
Not just talk about it, but how do we create real
Right.
affordable housing for the elderly? And I think that's super important to me. So I'm not sure what this is all about, but we're here to listen, and we're here to learn, and we're gonna do everything in our power to help fill not just one bucket, but as many buckets as we can. Does that make sense?
It does indeed, and I'm all in favor of having multiple buckets. I was telling Cindy earlier that the reason I got on some of these boards is that I sort of view Italian hill villages as a model, and I want to make Italian hill villages next to the common and around the train station. And there's going to be a variety of incomes and different family types and everything else. Villages have a wide range of people, and I think it's important to have wide ranges of types of people in communication with each other, and stay away from the gated community where everybody's the same. So I think you've seen this sheet that I made up, the conceptual goals because I made that up just so we would have a way of talking about what we wanted in terms of apartment sizes.
Yeah, do you mind, is that an extra copy?
Yeah.
Thank you.
It was just, when we were talking about affordable units, units come in different sizes, and affordability comes in different percentages of AMI. So I made a table that put unit sizes versus AMI bands and a chart. I just made up numbers. There's nothing sacred about that. But it was a way for us to think about what our goals would be. And nobody's given me any argument, so that's the way it stands right now.
Can we learn more about the support of this elderly population that we have in Littleton, and what the need is for that? And has that been discussed? Is, a number of units?
Yeah.
I get the workforce housing because I think we can kind of figure that out, but I'm really interested to see how we can solve that problem that I think
Yeah.
it's a big problem in gateway cities, I'm going to be honest with you.
Yeah.
So I am now looking at that in some of my other projects, this population that's aging, and how do we create housing for them? I think it's super interesting the way it was described to me in Littleton, you know, that you have these big, beautiful homes, you know, the kids have moved out, you know, now it's, you know, they want to sell their home, keep that equity, so to speak, or that's what they're gonna live off of, but they don't want to leave the area, they're accustomed to it. So the chart you gave me, does that also incorporate that, or is there something that's a different chart for elderly? Because this
No,
kind of
that-
looks,
that
this is a
doesn't-
three-bedroom,
that
I'm
chart
not sure
doesn't
that's
address
for,
elderly.
this is not elderly.
No, it was just, I was trying to get my head around affordability and the different components of that.
Well, I mean, it does address it as far as the AMI percentages go. Like the 60%, the 80% AMI percentages would benefit some senior citizens in Littleton. But then there's a deeper affordable component to that. We have, there's about 45% of the households in Littleton are considered very low income. And that means that their AMI is about 50% or less. So that's really a deeper degree of affordability than what's referenced on this chart, to Bartlett's point. So it would be below the 60% AMI. Would benefit a lot of seniors in Littleton.
Is there any sense that the town has in terms of like number of, for example, if it was 10,000 affordable units for seniors, that's far too many. 10 units, probably far too less. Is there an assessment of sort of the need, what the demand is, I guess, for those type of units?
Perhaps we should ask the chair of the Council on Aging if she has any information.
Hi there.
Hi.
I'm Laura Train. I don't have the data up here, but maybe Susan does, because she's...
No, I don't have it
You
with
don't
me
have it
either.
either. Susan is our representative on the Affordable Housing Trust from the Council on Aging Board, who attends every meeting. I'm here because you're here. Really, but anyway.
Thank you.
But, and I don't have the data on that. However, I mean, we just know, we had a needs assessment done back in 2015 by UMass Donahue Institute. And, you know, they provided a lot of data and it pointed out a lot of things to us. And ever since then, we've been really focused. We have two things in town we're focused on. And affordable housing is a primary one, is in our senior centers. But anyway, yeah, there's a huge, I don't have the answer though, sorry.
That's okay. So can I just,
But we can probably get it for you.
from the planning board standpoint, we've been wrestling with the affordable housing for about 15 years. They've come before us. When I started, I wasn't a senior, I'm a senior now. And all the talk had been about affordability, because Littleton doesn't have any place to go. If you own a house, that's it. There's very little apartments. So the problem has always been for the seniors, you sell your big house, you raise your family, you have 4 bedrooms, you want to downsize, there's no place to downsize to. Excuse me. The other issue was cost, price, availability. We wrote a senior bylaw hoping to get the prices down, but the ones that we've done so far they don't have the density to get the prices down, or we don't have a partnership with the developer or whatever to get the prices even lower. So we're not getting true affordable units for the seniors. We're getting senior housing, but it's not the true 60 or less affordable housing like everyone around us is starting to do by partnering up. The interesting part that when you came before us and talked, before you bought the property, you talked about working on a component outside of your project. I think that's what excited me about it, about maybe getting a partnership together to do some sort of affordable, because they all don't fit together. They're all components of doing housing, but maybe they don't all fit together sometimes. If we're going to do something for the seniors like to be with the seniors, and an affordable component with the senior housing would be fantastic if we could pull something off like that.
You know,
But as far as affordability, we're not there yet.
Can I just say, add one thing? I'll use myself as an example. You know, I don't have one of the big houses in Littleton. Came here, you know, in my 20s, raised 2 children here, split entry ranch, really, still no mortgage, because I had a tough life. And I can't, there's no place to go. So I'm holding up, we have another problem, because I'm one of those people that isn't willing to, there's no place for me to move to, no apartments, nothing, you know, and I'm holding up a house that would be a great beginner for other younger people to come in,
With a
start a
family.
home,
Yeah,
you know, and there's a huge, I think Cindy's pointed that out to us a long time ago, huge need in that age category too. So, you know, it's a catch-22 in a way. And I'm one of those people. I have a great house, you know, and my own kids can't afford to live here, you know, either. So, anyway, that's one of our problems in town.
So we do have those numbers. We brought in, was it Metropolitan Area Council, Maren?
Yeah, Metro West Collaborative Development
Yep.
was able to parse out some of the numbers.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah, so I mean, like, I have 45% of senior households are considered very low income, but
Right.
how many residents is that? And we do have that in that report, we just need to pull that out, what exactly that number is.
But it seems like
As far as
such-
our current population.
Certainly, there's some pent-up demand for it, it
Yeah.
sounds like, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a.
If you build it, they'll come.
Yeah.
There's housing on farther down Shattuck Street, or up Shattuck Street, this elderly and family, and the wait list to get in there is 7, 8, 9 years.
Huh.
So there is a lot of pent-up demand.
But that's subsidized, right?
That is
That's
subsidized,
slightly
that's
different.
state-owned.
You know, I do like, we're being very forthright. I've never built affordable housing for the elderly before,
Yeah.
affordable housing for workforce. You know, so if there's an opportunity to partner with the town on a project, or multiple projects, or if they have outside-the-box thinking, if there's any ideas that you may or may not have, I am full on in listening to any ideas that you may have in partnering on projects and things like that. If we can bring the numbers up, Ricky and I are here to listen. Make sense? Do you have anything else?
No, just obviously, it's probably evident, right? But, you know, constructing a sizable number of units for seniors that are below 50% AMI, it's not a, it's not something that's going to kickstart, for example, the 550 King Street project. I think a lot of what we're talking about, the 550 King Street project is going to be subsidizing and enabling us and allowing us to kind of invest in this other type of housing. So I think as we talk about it with the town, as we think about it, putting the puzzle pieces together, finding the right balance that allows us to sort of pay for the cost of constructing this housing that is restricted to certain income amounts is going to be an important part of the challenge for us.
So when you say subsidizing, you're saying the market rate units are going to subsidize the low income units?
Yeah, probably. My guess is, you know, since there's a pent-up demand that seems evident, right, in town, but yet nobody's come to town to build it yet, is that probably as a standalone project, you know, constructing that type of housing is probably not a profitable endeavor. But like you pointed out, when we have the type of density that we have at 550 King Street, possibly the market rate units may help us be able to afford to construct this type of housing, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I get that you're used to constructing a workforce housing, but my interest will be in the design of whatever's being constructed for the elderly. We don't want it to be so cheap that a functionality for the elderly is compromised. So I'll be interested in the design of it. You know, no mixed faucets and things like that that will enhance their longevity and life.
Well, I can sort of speak to that. The one good thing about our senior residential bylaw is it does have a lot of things in it for the seniors, the wider doorway, so that if later on you need a wheelchair, that's all in there. The handicap bathrooms, the potential to put it, to make anything handicapped, that's all in there. The added addition of ramps and things like that. When we went through the senior bylaw, all the units had to be, they didn't have to be handicapped accessible, they had to have the ability to be handicapped accessible. So that's all in there, and I'm sure that we would use part of that as the tool as we move forward with senior housing anywhere in Littleton, not just.
Right, I don't doubt that, but there's a specific design intent for seniors.
You know, I think what we do really well as an organization is when we do a project, prior to any construction, really prior to the building permits, we bring part of the community in. We talk about the quality of what they'd like to see, potential renters from other projects that we have, you know, what kind of finishes. And I know there are people in this room that have been able to see the finishes that we have used in what I'm proud to say, probably the most economically challenged city in the entire state is Lawrence, Massachusetts. And by far, the finishes that we've used in the three poorest cities north of Boston, Lowell, Lawrence, and Haverhill, they rival, and please tell me if I'm wrong, they rival any of the finest finishes that you'll find in Boston. So as far as quality, we think that's super important. And whether it's for market rate housing or affordable, your quality shouldn't diminish. People shouldn't suffer because they have to pay less, or there's an opportunity to pay less. I just think you have to find a different way to support that financially through other revenue streams or other partnerships or other projects that exist. Does that make sense?
You do make sense, but the push of my conversation isn't specifically on quality. It's on the design intent with the elderly in mind.
Accessibility.
Things that you need to insert into the building to help them age in place. Those are the types of design items I'm looking at, not necessarily the quality.
Yeah, I hear you loud and clear on that. Not only, you know, accessibility, but within the units themselves, how are the units laid out? How are they designed to allow for someone to age in place?
Exactly.
Yeah. Loud and clear. Yeah, we'll work, when the time comes, when we get our ducks in a row, we'll work hard with the architects to come up with some good ideas. And I mean, probably, I wouldn't see why we wouldn't bring some ideas to pitch to this trust when we're further down the line for your thoughts. And, you know, if there's ways that we can improve the project through public input, that's why we're here now. You know, frankly, right? We're here now to kind of collect thoughts and ideas that hopefully help to improve the project. That's been our experience.
Sure.
Yeah, I think the Council on Aging would be another great, set of ears.
Right.
And if there's projects around the state that have been successful that we want to model after, we'd be happy to, I'm sure that between Rick and myself, we can knock on that door and see this product that might be the Cadillac of the need.
Senior living.
Yeah, exactly. We don't know, but we'd be happy to travel anywhere. You might say, we have relationships, Sal, with this type of with this particular builder in this particular community. Introduce us, we'll go see it.
Right, so if I may, Bartlett.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think the one thing that we've learned through our housing production plan is that senior citizens and young adults like the same type of housing, which is really kind of neat. They like to be together, they like amenities, they like low maintenance, they like it to be nice, nice quality. So I think in that sense, it's kind of a no-brainer that they could cohabitate within the same type of building units. So I guess my question at the beginning, you talked about like different buckets, could you just clarify like what that means? So at 550 King Street, if we were just gonna kind of envision what it would be there and what these different buckets would look like, would that be, X amount of fair market value units, working through the planning board process, there's gotta be an affordability component to that. Would there be a threshold where a cutoff with the affordability component? So say, just for example, like 60% AMI would be the cutoff at 550 King Street. To get that deeper affordability that we've been talking about for our senior population, you're envisioning that being another project somewhere else, somewhere in Littleton, as opposed to being incorporated into 550 King Street itself?
I think all ideas are on the table.
Okay.
You know, that's one idea. You know, existing buildings, renovation of existing buildings, for example, like when we talk about, does it exist somewhere offsite, is a much less expensive way to construct buildings. So if you can build the units for less money, then it stands to reason that you can charge less for them.
Right.
So that's one of the reasons why perhaps looking outside of just the 550 King Street box is appealing, because, you know, probably the IBM buildings aren't going to be suitable for senior housing given their prior use. And those are the only existing buildings that we have on the site. So I think we're sort of all ears, looking for opportunities. I think Sal had alluded to it, but you know, if the town has ideas or knows of properties that are available or knows of projects that we could help to partner and to help create that anywhere really in town, we're all ears. But I wouldn't specifically exclude 550 King Street from the conversation. It's just that we know to achieve the level of affordability that we're talking about, it helps to start with an existing building.
Right. I mean, and we are, I guess what we can put together for you, like what those different buckets could look like.
Yeah.
That would be helpful to you.
Yeah.
Because we do have that information, we just haven't really, and we do have our concept goals, but we could coincide that with the concept goals that we have.
Yeah, and I
That
mean,
we'll share with you tonight, if that would be helpful.
yeah, in our discussions, you know, the different buckets we've heard about, you know, market rate housing is one, workforce housing, particularly for either, you know, we call workforce housing probably between 80 to 120% AMI, something like that, which is the teachers, firefighters, policemen, that type of demographic, but not age restricted. We're thinking about and have heard about possibly the desire in the King Street Village area for maybe over 55 sort of more luxury type units, which are larger units, upscale, right within the village. And then of course the more deeply affordable senior living units. Those are sort of the four buckets that we've heard about, but we weren't sure if, you know, are there more buckets out there that we don't know about. And those are the puzzle pieces we're trying to sort of meld together to make sure this thing comes out really strong, cohesive project that benefits Littleton for a long time.
Right.
And meets the needs of the town in terms of housing stock.
One question I have is, are we discussing at all subsidized or capital A affordable? Because I haven't heard it, and I'm not suggesting we do, but I don't know if any of you have the expectation that we're going to include any of that in this discussion.
My understanding is that the first three categories he outlined will subsidize the last four, the senior affordable. So they're probably going to build those first, or produce those and then produce the senior affordable last.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say not necessarily.
Not necessarily,
Not
yeah,
necessarily.
but the intent is that you would, it may go hand in hand, you may be doing them at the same time, but a certain percentage of the property will be set aside for the senior housing, but then 75% or more will be the first three categories.
That's sort of what we're thinking.
Right, but then the order doesn't necessarily have to be how I outlined it.
That's right, yeah, and I think kind of, you know, because there are different housing types, I think the likelihood is that the project will wind up phased. And so it might not be that you develop, for example, like all of the market rate housing all at once and all first. Maybe you do some market rate apartments, and then you come in and do some senior apartments, and then you come and you do the workforce, what I'll call, I guess, like workforce millennial housing, and then you come back to market rate again, and then back to seniors again. It could be likely, very, very likely will be constructed in
Staggered.
phases. Yeah. Yep.
You know, I just want to allude to what Rick is talking about. So, this is a marathon, and anything we do in our organization, we look at it from a marathon approach. For example, Lawrence, Massachusetts, and I keep coming back to the great city of Lawrence, Massachusetts. I went in front of city council, I told them it was going to be a 20-year vision. I'm on my 20th year now. Now, I'm not saying that Littleton is a 20-year vision, but all I'm saying is, I can promise you, this is not going to happen overnight.
Right.
We want to have a slow, controlled, thoughtful approach to, as this comes out of the ground, We want to make sure that we can pivot if there seems to be a desire, because the market dictates it. But we certainly don't want you to think, nor have I ever alluded to, that all of this is going to come out of the ground at the same time, and we're going to have X amount of units of this. It's too nice of an asset for the Lapoli companies in the town of Littleton not to have a slow, thoughtful approach of how this 42-acre site lives. This will be one of the bigger projects in the state when it's all finished. Let's make it an example as opposed to rushing or trying to fit X amount of units by a certain amount of time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So you think, Sal, for the workforce, you'd think it's like 80 to 120% AMI?
Yeah, for the workforce housing,
Yeah.
the, so millennial housing is what we call it.
Yeah.
Yep.
And the affordability there would be because they'd be relatively small.
Yep, studio and 1 bedrooms, yep. That's
And that
what-
really works, is right within the findings that we have
Mhm.
done through our studies, that 80% AMI price point would certainly benefit a lot of people in our community, so that's good.
Yeah, I think we'll try to educate ourselves on the studies that have been done, by Metro West. Was it Metro West and UMass, or was it the same study?
That-
No,
I think
it was,
Two separate studies to read, okay.
Yeah.
Metro West was
But
more
who was that,
recent, right?
the consultant that we brought in, Maren, that
Right.
put everything together for us?
Right,
That's,
Metro West Collaborative Development.
we should
Um,
send over that
Yeah,
report, that's a
more
good
recent.
report.
Yeah.
that's more recent than the UMass one.
Yeah, remind me now.
Yeah, so we'll educate ourselves a little more on the study that's already been done, but it sounds also, separate from the study, anecdotally, there is a demand, a pent-up demand
Yeah,
for the housing, and we want to see if we can be a helper of solving that problem.
that's great.
So that brings us to the seniors, the affordable seniors. That's not where we're coming from. The 80 to 120 is,
Right,
and I'm speaking for the senior, that doesn't help you. That
Correct.
doesn't get you out of your house. That's the next step, and that's what I think we really want to talk about. Everybody around us has been partnering up with somebody to do deeply discounted, I'm not calling it subsidized, I'm calling it deeply discounted housing for seniors. You have to have an asset that makes sense for the Lapolis to do it, makes sense for the town to have it, and makes sense to give them more density if they give us more senior affordability. So that's where the brainstorming really needs to come in. Okay, everybody, I keep going back to Keith Bergman, who kept talking about, I call it Binford, I know it's not Binford Farms, Benfield Farm, in Bedford, where he started, and he wanted to try to get us to follow that path 10 years ago. Find a piece of land or have a building or something like that we can negotiate density, cost, and everything else. And as you heard Ricky say, it's a lot cheaper if you already have a building up to refurbish that building than to start from scratch and pay prevailing wage and everything else like that to build. Because our ultimate goal is affordable units for seniors, smaller, senior housing that they can transition from the big house that they don't want to maintain anymore, have a few dollars so they can sell it or let their kids take it over or something, and they have someplace else to go. And it's not a swap of selling their $500,000 house and moving into the $500,000 senior housing that we're
Right.
building now. They want something deeply discounted, probably below 50% AMI by the time it's done. So that's what the challenge of the fourth bucket is.
Littleton has an unfortunately high AMI.
No. But it doesn't have to be that. It could be, it's like what Shirley just did. It's like the one in Acton that you sent over to me that Acton just did. Everybody around us is coming up with creative ways to build senior housing, and that's what we should be, at least, another way of somebody willing to look at the buckets we have, that should be one of the buckets that we have, and how do we go about it? At least that's where I'm. Planning board stuff, we're gonna take care of the workforce housing, we're gonna take care of the senior housing, we're gonna take care of the density, the 80 to 120 AMI, that's all in ours, and
Right.
we'll beat them up on that one. If we want more than that, we're gonna want something creative out of that. And that's why it'd be nice if we could all have a dialogue to come up with something Littleton can offer them to at least a starting place to get affordable, deeply discounted affordable housing in Littleton.
You mentioned earlier, like, thinking out of the box and doing some project that isn't necessarily at 550 King Street. Although I know you haven't done senior housing before, but have you done that as an adjunct to some of your other projects?
The answer is no.
Okay.
Well, not exactly like what we're talking about here, but he might be one of the largest developers in the state of existing buildings. So
Yeah.
his construction team is extremely knowledgeable in how to take buildings, and renovate them into apartment units. I mean, they have one building in Lawrence, just in one building. That was one of the longest continuous mill buildings in the world at one point, I think, the wood mill, where now there's 600 apartments
Yeah.
in it, directly across from a train station. So, not specifically the way that we're talking about it, but if there's anybody in the state who knows how to develop an existing building into housing, it's his construction team.
And to sort of like, just reiterate what Mark said, the reason you do that is because that gets you, it's more affordable for you, and that the price ends up being
And
lower.
it doesn't have to compromise, the things that we're talking about, like coming up with innovative layout designs for the units that promote accessibility and aging in place, and also not compromising on finishes. It's like, okay, well, something's got to give at some point to keep the costs where they need to be. And one of those things can be, well, do you already have an existing shell? Is there a driveway and a parking lot that already exists that you don't have to pay for to build? Is there a building that has water services already to it, so you don't have to tap in the street? So there's a lot of advantages. Yeah, the sewer available, or does a larger system exist to connect into? There's a lot of advantages to existing structures that are costs that have already occurred, and they help substantially keep the project costs down.
Okay.
And it allows us, I think, to be really creative and make sure that the units turn out very nice. If some of those base sort of peripheral costs are a little, restrained.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So just to get back to, I think Cindy, myself, and Anna can attest to we got a chance to see Mr. Lepoli's finished product, fit and finish of them. The apartments were huge. A one-bedroom was 1,000 square feet. And it's pretty easy when you have 1 million square feet to get rid of. 1,000 square feet, the fit and finish was all stainless steel, it was all quartz, it was plank flooring. The units, I'm in the business, I renovate apartment complexes for a living, that's what I do. His fit and finish was as good as what I do. And that's, we're in high-end stuff in the city of Boston. His fit and finish, you couldn't tell a subsidized from a regular unit. They were that good. And to your point, wide open floor plan so that there's plenty of room to age. If you become wheelchair bound, I didn't think the units were an issue with the wheelchairs getting into the kitchens or into the bathrooms or into the living rooms or the bedrooms. They're big units. They're not skinny, small little. And that's the beauty of taking an existing building and repositioning it, I guess is the best way to put it.
My first job was in Lawrence in a mill building that they were building out, and I could go up to the 5th floor that was completely open.
Yeah.
It's basically like the deck of an aircraft carrier.
Yeah.
I mean, it's ridiculous how big those things were.
Yeah, they don't make them like that anymore.
No, they don't.
You're 100% right, but to Rick's point, I'm here because what are we truly trying to accomplish? Right, let's start with that. What are we truly trying to accomplish? You're not trying to say, hey, Sal, go build a building, lose money, and give it. You're not saying that. Nobody would say that. What you're saying is, how do we partner? How do we create? And how do we put out truly affordable housing for the elderly? Well, if that's the case, how do we bring some of those costs down? And that's all we want to try to figure this out. And it's a little over here, it's a little over there. Density, at 550 gives us an opportunity to say, okay, other products out there, we can pour more money into it to create more units of affordability. So we're good at that. We're super good at that. To Mark's point, of taking buildings that you would have never thought would be housing and have one of the biggest housing developments in the state there. And it would, that, by the way, that is all market rate, and I will bet the entire property on this next statement. Phase 1 and Phase 2 of it. We're building Phase 3. We broke ground, we started leasing them in April. We have 185 units already leased since April. And in Phase 1 and 2, which are 258 units, we have 1 unit available. And this is all at the top of, these are all $2,000 units, by the way. These are not inexpensive units, at least what I think. And
Yeah, importantly so, but also they're not $5,000 units either. So the price point in Lawrence is very high. $2,000 a month is not an inexpensive unit by any stretch. But even when you compare it to some of the AMIs here in Littleton, so in other words, he's able to construct that type of construction quality very close to what we're talking about for the market rate housing prices, which is exciting, and that's why we're optimistic we can do better on the affordable housing for senior side as well. But putting all the puzzle pieces together so that it all works out is an important, that's, we have to put our thinking hats on for that.
And we're able to lease the product because it's a great product. You know, and I know sometimes people get intimidated when they hear big numbers, but the truth of the fact is, it's created a village over there. For some of you that may have seen it. They live there, they work there, they eat there, they have entertainment there, you know. So if we could think about that, you know, and maybe there's the ability with other sites to connect it to that, right? You know, we've had programming before where we've run shuttles, theoretically speaking, and, you know, from one site to another to bring those two sites together. So they don't necessarily have to live on the same parcel. We can, because of our programming, we could bring that in and almost create one site. Does that make sense?
Great.
So, based on what I'm hearing, this is, aside from this discussion, Marin, where does that put the presentation we heard from you a couple of months ago or last month?
As far as,
As far as, is that part of this design, this whole,
Oh, are you referring to the village concept plans? Is that?
I believe so.
okay, yeah, so.
We've had a lot of these, sorry.
The zoning bylaw that was passed at town meeting, that'll govern how they design their development proposal.
Okay.
So to me, hand in glove, it all works together.
Okay.
So I have one more thing, and actually Marlon and I found out about it today. National Development just sold you the property, correct?
They
Hudson.
owned it,
They owned it before?
yeah, it's like 3 times before.
Oh, okay. They're very interested in the fact that it got rezoned and everything else, and they want to know if you would be interested. They want us to refer them to you about senior age in place housing out there.
I think we saw, you
If
sent
you-
an email out today, as a matter of fact, yeah.
Yeah, they're, you know.
Well, that's part of the success of this, right? You know,
Right. They just want to have a discussion about it, because we've talked about, when we talked to the townspeople, and we talked about the potential of maybe an age and site project out there where seniors can stay there until they can't stay there anymore.
What kind of organization is that?
National Development, they're a national developer. They're the one who repositioned the digital site before it was leased to IBM.
I think it was HP by that time. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they must have somebody that's expressed an interest in looking at that
I see.
site.
Right, they have done senior living.
The nice part is that somebody might be interested in partnering up with them to do senior in-place housing.
got it.
That's the point I was trying to make. Yeah. That would be.
Another developer who would do like a
Or
sub.
maybe somebody that actually does that for a living, because
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
a specialty niche in and of itself, so.
Okay.
At least something to think about anyway.
absolutely, absolutely. we have a motto, we check our egos at the door. You know, if somebody can come in and make our project better by giving us advice, or they have a specialty that they could add to the site, you know, some kind of programming, or they look through a different lens, we don't care who gets the credit, we just want the best product out there.
So I guess moving forward, because you're gonna be, I have no idea what you're gonna do before the planning board, but, you know, obviously, you're gonna wanna talk about what you're gonna build out there at some point, sooner or later, or maybe have some rough charrettes of what you're thinking about there. And we're gonna wanna talk to you about workforce housing, senior housing, and then, if we can, discounted senior housing. So in order to do that, we're gonna need an idea of how to come about that. So I think it's part of our job is to get some, amongst ourselves, come up with some ideas of how we want to proceed forward with that, and then share it with them, I think. I mean, I'm speaking out of turn, but I think I'm wearing my planning board hat right now.
Yeah, and these meetings, I think, are really, they're nice to do now, right? We don't have any applications submitted with the planning board as an example, so this is the time we can all talk around and conceptualize. I think that gets probably harder once we've made a filing. Is that everybody's sort of understanding of it? When it's in front of a board for review, it's harder to sort of keep changing it. So this is part of our collection of information, trying to figure out how to put the pieces together so we come forward with our best foot. And are not trying to sort of scramble to react to new ideas further down the process.
Have you ever dealt with affordable housing components in the state, like POA or people that do it, nonprofit kind of stuff, or you do everything in-house?
We do everything in-house. We have one of the largest construction companies in the state, believe it or not. But we do have relationships. We feel very easily, once we understand the buckets, we're welcome to have these introductions that you just so clearly articulated, but there's no question about it. You tell us what the buckets are, we'll get to the best people out there, they'll teach us, and we'll duplicate it. Make sense?
I'm curious what you think the process going forward is going to be as far as the give and take. Like, you know, I'm sure there's not a cookie cutter way of doing it, but
No, I think
there has to be some framework for like deciding whether the building is here or here, and then how big it is and so forth.
Yeah, I think the end all be all, based on the zoning, is the planning board. So I think that's where, the final unit mix, the final locations of buildings, and the final number of units, all that kind of stuff is sorted out there. But I think, based on feedback from this board and other stakeholders in town, I think the planning board has a pretty clear directive on what to push us towards as part of that process. Am I saying that right, Mr. Chair? That I think, it's been emphasized to us that there is a need for these different buckets. Don't come forward with a single type of housing product, or we're probably going to be swiftly kicked back out the door by the planning board. So like I said, so as far as process goes, right now we're collecting a lot of information. We're trying to fit the puzzle pieces together. We're trying to think creatively about how to attack the different buckets. The hardest one, as I think everybody probably understands, is the deeply affordable senior housing bucket. So we're trying to think creatively and collaboratively about that. So if anybody from the town, I don't know what the right way to convey information to our side is, but if anybody has ideas, please, let us know. We're all ears. Because I think at the end of the day, that's a need of the town, and it behooves us to help you guys solve it. Because that ultimately makes, what we're trying to do a better project and sets up Littleton for success for a long time.
So maybe we should figure out who we should talk to amongst ourselves before we meet.
And figure out a way of like channeling that communication. Because
Littleton has a lot of land, maybe we start thinking of raw land that we have and what we can afford to give up to do, or something, maybe I think we might have to think outside the box on this one, but this is the first opportunity in the 15 years we've been trying to do affordable housing that somebody's actually wants to do deeply discounted senior affordable housing, and not the stuff that we've been getting that Yes, it's senior
Two or three
housing.
units, right, at a time.
It's
Yeah.
senior housing, but it's not helping seniors get out of their houses, in all honesty.
You know, Mark, I know the bylaw requires, I think you have a figure of
10%.
10%. So it wasn't like we came in and we said, okay, we want to hit that threshold of 10% of affordable housing. You know, what's the box we have to check? You know, we came in here trying to understand, well, it's more than just what that phrase says. There's more to it. There's deeply discounted affordable housing for the elderly. There's affordable housing for the elderly. There's workforce housing in there. There's all different things in there. So we just want to point out that we're here to listen, and we understand, even though it's 10%, we'd like to be the example of working with you of how to raise that bar a little bit. We're not afraid to it, nor are we afraid to just, as an organization, might just say, well, listen, just stick with one product of workforce housing and be done with it. It's affordable. You know, we're here saying, okay, you know, if we're going to do this, let's do this right, but let's do this together. Because, well, respectfully, humbly, it'll be incredibly challenging if you just say, listen, the poly companies, we want this, and this, and good luck, get it done. That's probably counterproductive. We want to say, okay, tell us what you want, let's set the bar, but let's do it together in a way that we can fill a lot of buckets, not just one. Does that make sense?
It actually does. It makes sense that you don't want to do what the standard norm has always been. We'll give you 10% affordable, this is it, this is our AMI. You understand, or I think you're hearing that. That's okay for most people, but that doesn't help the seniors, the network. And they're the ones that are being left. We keep leaving them behind, to be perfectly honest. Everything we've done. We started a senior bylaw, maybe it's a little late, maybe it's not the best we did, but we've left, they have not benefited from that senior bylaw so that they can still stay in Littleton, still stay with their friends in Littleton, and still have someplace that smaller, they can we haven't been able to allow them to downsize. And I think you're listening to us, and I think you're hearing that from them.
Cindy was very articulate when she talked about, you know, affordable housing in the town of Littleton. And Cindy, we want to make you proud. You know, we want to make the town of Littleton proud. We want to do this the right way. That's why we're here, right? You just didn't get some plan that said, okay, there's the affordable, you know.
10%, we checked the box, let's move on. Yeah.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
That's not the goal.
You were very, very clear when we started this process of Sally, give us an opportunity just to listen to us about the needs that we have in our community. And we're trying to do that, Cindy, and hopefully that we'll be able to work with you and be creative on some of those ideas.
Right, I appreciate that. We've done a lot of work on this topic over the past years. You know, Marin's been championing it, you know, and we've prepared. We have the housing production plan. We started the Affordable Housing Trust. Our senior, the Council on Aging, has been very active in having discussions with us and very vocal, letting us know that it's not working, and it's not working for our town, and recognizing that is the first step. So I appreciate having this conversation and your candor. We certainly have a lot of information that we can share with you, and definitely have a continued dialogue going forward to see what we can do to take this opportunity, which to me is very exciting. What's being proposed at 550 King Street is going to be pretty amazing for our town, but let's just make sure that it is going to fit the needs that we have, and that, make sure that we do take advantage of this opportunity and this willingness to work together. So I appreciate that.
Thank you, Cindy.
So I have a final question. I know you talked about partnering with the city and doing stuff. You must have an idea of what you would need from the city. Do you need some breaks in certain areas, or?
Actually, we don't.
No, I think probably, you guys are certainly much more understanding of the needs directly here in Littleton than we are. Neither of us are residents. We haven't been trying to study the housing market and understand how to help the seniors in town as long as, you guys have. So I think more than anything, what we really need is if there's a big idea out there that's missing that we're not thinking about, help us. Help us help you, help us help you.
Yeah, let me just give you an example, because I don't want you to think that, we're not answering the question. Let me give you an example. If you said to us, Sal, we want a dozen units of deeply discounted affordable housing, I would think of it in one way. If you said to me, Sal, we want 30, we want 40, we want a total number of units, we want to concentrate on it, then I would tell you, I'm going to think another way. And that other way that I might think might be, okay, maybe it's another building, it's another parcel, it's somewhere else, there's a relationship between the two. It's really, you have to help me get to the number of units we're trying to solve for each one of the buckets, and then I'll tell you where they fit, and then I'll tell you how do we partner. But if you were just to say, Sal, what do you want from us? I'm honest enough to say to you, we've never done it. Doesn't mean we can't do it. We can do anything. It's proved already. What we've done in the 3 poorest cities in the state, nobody has ever done, period, bar none. So if you tell us what you want, if you tell us the number of units, then we can go back to our lenders and say, hey, listen, how do you help us with this successful project? You have to allocate funds in a different direction. It's not market rate that you thought, or maybe it's not this, office retail manufacturing component. We have to rejigger some of the numbers here. But they're always going to come back to, well, how many units are you talking about? Or what is it that you want from us? Because deeply discounted affordable housing for the elderly is much different than what we're going to build for the firemen. Does that make sense?
Exactly, yeah.
So I need your help. Would you say help me, help you,
Help
help
you,
us?
help you. Yeah, so like anything, we get better, the more information we have, the better we're gonna do at trying to sort of hit the bullseye on the town's needs. So if people have ideas about the numbers, or if we missed a bucket that we forgot about, when we're talking about things tonight, please let us know.
Plus, we have to find out what money's available to us, too, from a state standpoint, for the housing, too. There's probably all kinds of funding. If we have a developer who's willing to build it, I'm sure there's all kinds of funding mechanisms available for that, too.
That was my question earlier about subsidized, state subsidized versus just affordable. Like, are we going there?
In my understanding, anything less than 60% affordable, you need to go there, whether it's deep partnership with the developer and/or state and/or fed. I'm wondering if we wouldn't be well served by taking just a couple minutes and thinking about the different senior units that are available in town, and if there are some that we think are great successes, we just highlight those. The recent ones, the Jones Meadow with the small single-family units off of Cricket Lane. A couple of households from Littleton were able to downsize, one of them to an affordable unit. We had, at the other end of the time frame, we had the Littleton Green, which is the, 36 units right off of
Right by the post office.
yeah, right by the post office. Those are deeply affordable, well, some are deeply affordable senior units, rental units. I was wondering if, that an updated development like that wouldn't fit some of the needs. But those are just some of my thoughts. We've never had a discussion about, maybe what type of units we would hope to see, or where we think the successes are.
How successful was Cooper Farm? Is it Cooper Farm?
At Dean Lane, where up to 16 units of senior housing or over 55 housing. We have 3 affordable units there. and they have a few more market rate units to build out there as well. Those are home ownership units, so that's it's my understanding that the residents that are in the affordable units have really formed a community there and are doing quite well. What else? We've got Mill Pond, and there's.
That's 40B though, that is subsidized, no bonds.
Right, but,
Right.
And Pine Tree,
right, in Pine Tree Park.
which I'm not gonna categorize that as necessarily a success, but it's there.
But we're still at this 60 to 80% AMI if we're gonna get down below it.
Except for Pine Tree.
Right, we have to figure a way to make it viable for them and workable for us.
Right. I think to the suggestion to get the number, I think we need to go back to that report, that study we had done, Maren,
Yep, certainly would be
and maybe
that.
start with that, because all the answers are in there. We just need to revisit that report, I think, is a great starting point. And then I like your suggestion about looking at what we've already done in town, what we deem a success and a failure, and what we really, feel we need going forward. I think we've all determined we lack rental housing in town. I think it's hard. A lot of seniors don't want to go from owning a $500,000 house to owning another $500,000 house. That's not going to help them out. We've already determined that. So, yeah, I think if we revisit what we have, and then we can go back to Napoli companies with more definitive information, I think that would be a great starting point for this discussion. Personally, and then just taking a look at what we do have. I mean, we need to, if we want to look at, areas in town that we might be able to utilize, town-owned land. I mean, I think, the trust is getting some land to them up by the train station, right? The Durkee Farmhouse, isn't that
Right,
5
the farm.
acres of land
Maybe it's
there?
5 acres.
But it's not much of it is buildable, right?
Yeah, see, I don't know that.
It's wet and it's steep.
Yeah,
They hit it right on the head. The biggest drawback to all of it is sewer.
Yeah, try to do
Right.
meaningful density.
Yeah,
Right.
to get it-
Sewer's gonna be the challenge.
yeah,
We need sewer. Now that we have sewer, we need it.
yeah.
To get the price point down, we need sewer.
We have limited sewer. We will.
All right,
So why don't we look at it internally, and then if we can come up with some ideas for them, you're not coming before the planning board anytime soon anyway, so.
No, we're
we have
trying to
some
fit the
time.
pieces together still.
yeah, well, I'd like to start with that report, though, and get that number. What is the number of seniors that we're looking at in town? I think that will help guide us, to Sal's point about, once we identify that need, then we can go from there and kind of figure out next
I
steps.
think it's gonna take much to identify, there's definitely a need.
No, I know, but I would like to know what that number is.
I'm sure
If we
you'd like
can-
to know the number for all the
To the best
buckets.
that we
We're gonna have to
can
quantify it somehow.
to the best of our ability,
We need to give them numbers for all the buckets.
Right.
And even if it's a range, and then that gives some flexibility to work together and, okay, well, I know you'd like, 200 of this unit type, but geez, if we can do 50 of that unit type, then we can do 50 other ones over here,
Yeah.
some flexibility
Right,
built into the ranges.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that report will be helpful.
Yeah.
Falling back on that.
Well, how many members do you have? Do you have any idea how many members around you,
How many members in the council?
On the Council on Aging,
yeah,
there's 9 board members.
how many how many people?
Oh, how many seniors?
Yeah,
Well, the projection is, let's see, projection by the year 2030 is that 40% of Littleton's going to be seniors.
so, we
And
need
our
more than 10 or
population
12.
is about 10,000.
All right.
Probably more than 10.
So we need units.
Probably more than 10.
And we're creeping up, so.
More than 10, less than 4,000.
That was a UMass prediction back in 2015, and so far, they're pretty accurate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
pretty close.
So that's-
So that would be 4,000 people.
Yeah.
Let me put it this way, I don't think they can build enough.
Yeah.
Right.
I know.
Okay.
Nothing else?
So, no, I mean, I guess my only follow-up is, I would just want to make sure for myself that you're comfortable putting a mix of units the unit type sizes in a building.
I think, we have to be, I'm being very forthright with you. We really have to understand what you're talking about for numbers of units.
Okay,
It's really important. I would be foolish to stand in front of you and answer that question without understanding what your needs are. Because I will say, it has to be very thoughtful of how you're building these buildings or where this programming is going for the project to be successful all around.
Yeah, I think to kind of illustrate that point, if we've identified the 4 buckets tonight,
mhm,
there probably won't be any one building that has all 4 buckets living within the same building.
Okay.
Because from a financing perspective and just like a building construction, there'd be very different units. They won't coexist in the same
They won't
building.
stack together and-
Exactly,
right.
yeah. I think, so, more than likely, they'll be side by side or, but not likely within the same building.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
all right.
Do we have a number, do we have a total number in the bylaw?
No.
A total number of units, it's whatever?
Well, they-
Well, I mean, there's a cap, obviously.
There's a
but-
theoretical cap of
Yeah.
like 800, but
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Okay.
We haven't even got.
Still-
I don't think you even know what.
No, but understanding what is asked of us coming into it helps us to figure out what that number kind of needs to be. As we kind of identified, the market rate housing is sort of going to be paying for a lot of this. So having a good understanding of how many of these affordable type units we're talking about helps us kind of narrow in on what that density is, and that'll be something I'm sure will be, part of the planning board process is kind of finding that right balance.
Would it be accurate to say, and this does not mean to be dismissive at all, like the more units, the better for you?
To a point, probably, huh?
If anybody answered you other than yes, they're not telling you the truth, so let's just start off with yes.
Yeah, okay.
That's how, let's,
Yeah.
if we're gonna do a project together, let's just put all the cards on the table. Let's figure this out for this aging population. How do we do it the best way? How do we pay for it? What are the buckets we have? We have density over here, Sal, we have the state over here that we can get money for, we have land, we have buildings. How do we mix all this together? Because it's not 10 units.
Yeah.
These are serious, this is probably, hopefully, will be one of the bigger projects for the town of Littleton to check the buckets, but to check the programming that they really need. Developers that come in and do 2 or 3 units, that's super important, because if you add up 10 of those guys and gals that do that, guess what? That's 30 units, that's a big deal. But this is an opportunity to take a big chunk of something away. Just, let's do it together. Just, please don't put all the onus on us, because it might not come out the way you want it. If we do it together, and we talk about it, and we throw all our resources in it, then we're gonna get a lot of units, and we're gonna do a lot of good things.
Good.
And we are on record. You can just look up the Lapoli companies, look up what this gentleman has helped build. We are littered with doing whatever the community, the needs are. We're one of the people in the community that sets the bar. We don't accomplish them all of what the community needs, but we set the bar. We've done that in Lowell, we've done it in Haverhill, and we've done it in Lawrence. And I'm not saying Littleton is like those communities, but an elderly person is an elderly person, whether they live in Lawrence or they live in Littleton, Mass. And, what we're trying to do is capture quantity and quality. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else want to say anything?
Thanks for having us in tonight.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for
Yeah.
coming.
You guys weren't lying when we said we get a lot of information here, so thank you.
There'll be a quiz.
Yeah.
I'll fail. Hey, Joe.
Motion to adjourn?
Motion?
Everybody
Go ahead.
So moved.
Second?
So our next meeting's the 21st?
All in favor?
Yay.
All in favor, stand up and leave.
Thank you, everybody.